I'm very excited to welcome a visionary leader to this episode of ThoughtHive. Mr. Vinayak Muzumdar serves as the CIO and CCO at Deloitte for South Asia and Mauritius, where he leads IT, information security, and confidentiality. He also serves as a trusted voice in Deloitte's Global Security and CI Council. Today, he is here to share us his playbook to build a digital enterprise first. Welcome, Vinayak.
Thank you, Anurag, and thank you, New Summit, for inviting me here. It's my privilege to be here.
Vinayak, we have talked a lot about what it means to get into a transformation. There are a lot of practical considerations and there are a lot of challenges. Let's get to some of those considerations as we talk about transformation. When you think about transformation, what are some of the non-negotiable pillars a CIO must establish today to be future ready for 2050?
Yeah, first of all, I think it is important to define what is digital first organization. When I talk about digital first, digital is not at the center, but is always business who is at the center, and digital is intertwined with business. Now, when you look at digital first organization, you first define a business strategy and then you find a means to achieve that strategy by digital. So that is what my definition of digital first is. Now, when you ask about what are non-negotiable, what is something that is must for a digital organization, there are three things. Obviously, the business model. When you define a business model, it should support digital. It should be digital model which is part of your business model. That is part one. Second thing is, when you talk about digital, you cannot ignore technology. So what technology that you are going to incorporate in digital first? So that is something which is very critical. The third part is people. Now people need to develop digital mindset, and that itself is exercise where organizations are training people to change the way methods that they have employed for many years to digital world.
Very interesting, Vinayak. Such transformations are never easy and smooth. So what were some of the biggest leadership challenges which you have faced when you have gone through such transformation at scale?
Yeah, Anurag, the first is thinking digital. That itself is difficult. Because we live in a physical world, it is easier for us to think about physical objects, physical ideas, physical processes. But when you think digital, the perspective is completely different. So that is the first important thing that organization should bring in. The second part, I would say, is second challenge is organization ability for transformation. Every organization has some appetite for transformation. Many organizations cannot absorb rapid changes. It's like a sponge. Sponge can absorb water immediately, but if you say wood cannot absorb water immediately. So each organization has its own appetite. Now when you plan digital strategy, you have to consider that fact, how organization can absorb. The third part, Anurag, and that is important, and that is part of every technology projects right from the beginning till today, is a resistance to change. This resistance to change is not simply because you are changing the way people work, but in many cases the power equations are getting changed. When power equations are getting changed, obviously people's vested interests come in play and they oppose any change which is coming through digital programs. That is something that CIO has to manage. The fourth, but one of the most important part of it is policies and procedures. Because normally organizations don't change policies and procedures very often. It is ingrained in that organization. But whereas for digital, it requires change. When you talk about, I'll take one example. When you say there is an expense process which is required. Now, in a normal physical world, you ask for multiple approvals because there are no checks and controls which are digitally employed. But when you talk about digital, you cannot have same controls and checks. Those controls and checks are built into the systems. So you only control by exceptions, and that is where it is very important that organizations should relook at their policies and procedures when they bring in the change.
Those were some very powerful insights. The insights about the people, the insights about processes, and insights about controlling through exceptions. Now let's deep dive a little bit more into the decisions and the trade-offs which a leader has to bring in when he leads such transformation at scale. How did you balance the need for agility with uncompromising demand for confidentiality and cybersecurity in today's age?
Yeah, Anurag, first of all, I would say I would like to replace agility with convenience, because agility is anyway required. And you have to provide it in spite of a lot of restriction on confidentiality and cybersecurity. So what you really compromise is convenience. So on one side, you have 100% convenience and no cybersecurity. On other side, you have cybersecurity, but the convenience is greatly compromised. Now, my take is simple. What are the areas where cyber and confidentiality play a very important role? First, law, regulation, no compromise. Second, brand and reputation, anything damaging to brand and reputation, no compromise. The third part is client or customer obligations. If client want you to follow certain standard, if there are any client imposed restrictions, no compromise, because it's ultimately trust between us and our clients. Anything else beyond that, you can balance. You can say that, okay, I'm little bit reducing certain cyber security standards. Yes, that doesn't mean that I'm compromising cyber standards. I'm making it little bit flexible, but you can play around here. And I think that decision has to be taken by leaders, because here it is very important when you take these decisions, the confidentiality or data security is not compromised. What is really important here is to understand holistically what are you going to do, and that only leaders can do, because they can connect the dots. And that is where I feel that some convenience can be offered.
That's very interesting bit of insights on convenience, which is something which we need to look at it very, very differently in today's age and world. So when we talk about convenience, to bring in convenience, lot of organizations are integrating their legacy systems with the new age systems. And when you do that, there are a lot of challenges. So what are some of the pitfalls which organizations need to watch out for when they are embarking on such transformations?
Yeah, first of all, there is no single recipe for succeeding in modernizing application, because every organization has to chart out its own path. As I mentioned earlier, that each organization can absorb change differently. The way they really manage internal dynamics differently. But there are certain things which are very important, and those should be considered. The first is objective. What is your objective for modernizing applications? What is it that it is going to offer more over normal legacy applications? So that is first we need to establish. Second thing important is whether the legacy application can support that sort of a modernization effort, whether it will provide data, it will provide technology, that is something that you can ingest in the modernized application. So that is the second part of it. Then comes technicalities. If you have data in legacy system, how are you going to consume that data into modernized application? How you are going to present it? Now, first of all, if your legacy system is processing data in a batch manner, is it going to help in a real-time system if you are developing under digital? It may not, because your data is always a batch process. So these are certain things which are important. Second part is obviously the security. One, how you are going to transfer data from legacy system to modernized system. Second part is how you are going to carry the privileges which are there from modern legacy system to modern systems. And another important part is governance of these applications, because today the governance was under legacy. Now normally the legacy group application team which maintains these application and the modern technology group, they are different. So how exactly you are planning to govern that entire structure? So that is what very critical. And on the top of it, you cannot ignore where these applications are sitting. Now normally if you look at legacy, these are on-prem applications, and when you plan for modern, it is either hybrid or it's on cloud. How exactly this will work? Will there be any latency issues, performance issues? These are the certain things I think you need to consider before you jump into modernization program.
As we wrap up, I want to touch upon what's next. What's next for the CIOs and what's next for the enterprises which they lead.